This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and guests. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is for informational purposes only. This podcast also does not establish a standard of care, doctor-patient, or client relationship. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. And because each person is so unique, all listeners are encouraged to connect with counseling and medical professionals for assistance with their personal journey. All people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved.
Welcome to We're Not Fine. I'm Dr. Talia Jackson.
And I'm Doug Jensen. We thank you for listening every week to our deep and thought-provoking conversations about relationships. Hello, everybody.
Hello. So happy to be back, even though Doug and I literally talk all day, every day. I feel like I haven't seen you in like
times.
30 seconds, Doug. You look different.
Do I have... What? Yeah, it might be that we're wearing spring wear now with your beautiful floral.
No, it is literally the most beautiful day on the planet, and May is the month that I get like sketchy AF, to be honest, because there's lilacs everywhere. I'm obsessed with lilacs. I've planted a couple trees. They have not succeeded. They're really kind of limp and sad looking. And so I sneak around in the dark of night and look for shrubs that, I don't know, that, don't look like they belong to anyone.
So peonies are my favorite, and mine are all about to go. I have like maybe 5 varieties in my yard, maybe 40, 50 plants. I absolutely am obsessed with them. But of course, they're very short term. But I thought of you yesterday because as I was making my way around my community, right off of 94 and St. Croix Trail, there was a massive gaggle of lilac bushes all in bloom. And I thought, I think Talia needs to come out here and just like romp around because they're nobodies except maybe the highways.
Maybe the highway people would be upset. 40 minutes for that.
I need to like I do every time we record. This is what I think about that. Like it's huge. Like it's just a huge bunch of lilacs, which are so pretty.
I'm in.
And I have some white and some purple in my yard and some pink. I do pink too. So
oh my God. I feel like if anything were branded lilac smelling, I would buy it right now. I'm such a sucker.
There's probably a lot of that, but probably not like cheap, maybe perfume. It's funny, when I was probably 8, I bought my older sister some lilac cologne from like the drugstore for her Christmas present. I'm sure it was like $5. But it smelled really pretty. It smelled like lilacs. But I'm sure it would like...
You are such a good brother. Like it was probably chemical, like toxic biohazard chemicals or something. I know what we were wanting to talk about.
Lilacs?
Now I'm remembering. No, Enneagram. That we were just going to wrap up because I feel like people were really pumped about the 2-part series. And then we had some really fun follow-up questions from people.
So I agree with that. Like, it was actually a little bit like fascinating to me how many people took the test. I think from that link that you gave everybody, from your connection. And it was interesting how many people came to me either saying, guess what I am? Or I want you to tell me what you think I am or whatnot. But I had a friend, a very dear friend, and you know who you are. I just had dinner with you last night. So, but she actually asked me, she said, I think I'm a 2 married to a 1. But the short test comes out a 4. And is it possible that, she kind of joked about it, she's like, my different personalities have different ways of manifesting and showing up in her life. But she was kind of curious about that. She's like, can I be a 2 and a 4? Because they're very different. And then also, like being married to a 1. She was just really kind of fascinated with the interpersonal piece of this, which you, I think, talked about pretty eloquently in the Enneagram episodes. We had 2.
I know. I mean, I do. I love that so much. I will say that might be advanced level Enneagram, but like I know we have tri-types. So some people can also, if they're not just like straight on one type, they can be just like a this, a that, and the other, like these 3 things that all really shine strongly. But usually you're a primary type and it does not change over time. So what happens is sometimes like we can be a really strong wing, and the wing, so if I'm a 7, My wing
Sure.
would either be an 8 or a 6, but also if I am really healthy, then my 7 turns a little bit like if my movement, I believe, is towards a 5, which is like the observer, which is like very balanced and more like in my head.
So that's not the
which is
sketchy
interesting.
spring part of you. Okay.
No, I
That
am
steals
full
people's-
on 7.
I'm going to warn your neighbors today afterwards.
Oh my God, don't be like Rob. Don't be like Rob right now.
I
Oh my
love
God.
Rob, so I'm glad to be
Which-
like number 1 Rob.
Oh my
Let
God,
me
I
tell
have
you
to tell
something.
you. Oh, you go.
No, one of the observations I might make is that I remember when we did these episodes, I was talking about like if I dated anybody, it would be a 2.
Oh yeah.
Like a
Yes.
2 was a good fit for me. And I have since found out that I have 3 very, very close people in my inner circle who have taken the test, and they're all 2s. So I am obviously, as a friendship group as well, I pick 2s. Although I love Rob, who's a 1. And I love
Yes,
you, who's
but
a
he
7.
has. Rob has a 2 wing.
Okay.
He's
Oh,
a
that's-
strong 1, but like he's got the helper giver vibe too. But can I tell you the funniest thing about Rob and his
I would love to hear the
oneness?
funniest thing about Rob.
Because like all of these little Enneagram anecdotes are
Sure.
so hilarious to me. So this is like typical 1 fashion. Rob came up with this word out of nowhere yesterday that sort of describes how he feels about other people, right? Because like the 1s, just to remind you,
Oh my
they're,
God.
Black or white, right or wrong, really like stand up people. It's all about integrity and honesty and doing things the right way. Tons of research, picking the rightest way, best practices to do all the things. So he spent the entire day yesterday. We were gardening all day. Our eldest son got this really weird kind of, it's not a Nerf gun, but it has these gellets. I mean, he's like 15 and 6 feet tall, but
I
still.
love
like,
him.
The,
Yep.
the kid loves a good toy every now and then. So it's
Yep.
like he was spraying all of these gellets around. I was gardening and like there was
Gellets.
dirt everywhere, and I was making really sketchy decisions about where I was putting the dirt and trying to hide it. So Rob basically was saying, God, ineptitude all day. So like he was like everything that my son and I did, right? It was all about ineptitude. Everything because Nadav's also a 7. So he was walking through the world like a tornado, as was I. And Rob was sending us photos of messes that we made and just said ineptitude.
Wow. I can't wait to talk to him since we're going to have a little gin and tonic time after today's appointment. Or
know.
session, I should say. Our recording session. It's not an appointment. It's
hard.
kind of an appointment.
It's hard.
But yeah, I
want
to talk to him about that, and maybe I'll just follow. I could take some pictures too. But that's I'm not going to take pictures because I think that would be shaming. So we'll talk to Rob
I know.
about that.
But that's why you've got to figure out when you're married to someone, when you're dating someone, when you're friends with someone, you just have to make sure that their issues and your issues don't really trigger each other, because we're able to really laugh about these things. And it's pretty cute. And like another thought about 7s in the Enneagram. So like, Nadav's also a 7. And it also reminds me, because
His wing.
now I think he's got an 8 wing, which is why you love him so much.
Oh.
But do you know the movie Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, that's coming out right now?
I've heard of it.
So it is just this coming of age Judy Blume that like all middle-aged moms everywhere are just like rejoicing that this is coming out. But he was so into acting. For several years, we had like representation in LA, and he was going places fast. So my little 7 was just all in, living, breathing, the acting scene. He gets neck and neck for the role of Philip Leroy, which is kind of like the preteen cute dirtbag guy. And he did not get the role. This other kid got the role after, the producer's session and all these callbacks. And he decided, even though he was like that close to being exactly where he worked so hard to be, he was like, hard stop. I'm not into it anymore. It's not fun anymore. And then he completely pivoted into scootering, like trick scootering, flips and turns and concussions and broken limbs and
ouch.
And then years later, hard stop. And now he's all in to football, like through and through, heart and soul. So it's like that's a true seven also. That's just to the point of mastery and then pivot. Like you no longer are into the thing that you've like almost mastered.
That's interesting. And I think it might be a difference between an 8 and a 7 because some of us dig in harder. If we don't get what we want, we dig in harder to keep going for something that we want. I just read an article, and I think it was Scarlett Johansson, not that this is all that relevant because I'm not all, who knows what we read is true or not, but Scarlett didn't get this role that Sandra Bullock got in Gravity, and she said she almost walked away from acting entirely. But she just kept to it, and look at her now. So I just think there's a lot to be said. And it's interesting because different personality types, and this is what's so humanizing, I think, about that discussion about the Enneagram, is that it does allow us to like have our different ways of being in this world. And for me, it would be like, I'm going to pound harder at it. I'm going to get better and better at something. And, it's like our private practices, right? Like at the beginning, we don't know if people are going to come to see us. We don't know if we have what it takes because it's
That's
really
right.
just such difficult, challenging, intimate work. And we're green at the beginning of our practice, beginning of our careers, we're green. And I'm so grateful for the clients that I have that honestly 25 years later are still seeing me, because it was a good connection. So what I think about it is it'll be interesting to see as Nadav moves forward, like as he switches from thing to thing that might be interesting. And that might be the way that he develops competencies in this world. He's good at everything maybe, that he does. Because that's a pretty extreme, like close to fame experience, right?
Isn't it crazy? And it was like effortless for him to just be like, done, hard stop, which of course I can really relate to as well with my 7-ness. But you're right, like the stick-to-itiveness, that's sort of like it's a little bit of a weak muscle for us. But I'm also thinking about your sweet friend that you were just bringing up that I mean, basically, there are the wings. Sometimes people have the tri-types of just like 3 that are really strong. But usually it's that the healthier we get, we're moving towards another vibe, another type, or starting to enjoy some of the healthier aspects of another type. And when we're unhealthy, it starts to show up as like maybe a different type. And I'd have to look at that diagram because there are arrows. If you look up the Enneagram, you'll see that your type maybe like in health is moving in one direction and in stress is moving in another. So that might be what's happening for her.
As everybody, first of all, I'm just going to call her out. Hello, Lissa. Thank you for sharing that experience.
Hello,
of yours.
Lissa. Always ask us about the Enneagram.
And thank you for a delightful question, which we invite from our friends as well. But this is what I want to say about that. Like the other thing, and Talia, as you know, I'm not an Enneagram expert. I don't utilize it in my practice. I have never really studied it. When people ask me what number there are, I'm like, I know what an 8 is. I know what a 1 is because of Rob. I know what a 2 is because I want to date them. I think my friend Nicole, despite me being gay, I think Nicole and I should be dating. Shout out to you as well, baby. But I also want to say,
you have a work wife. You might as well have like a girlfriend too.
I call her my bird scooter wife. We scooter around the old town of Scottsdale. But I've learned a lot, right? And it is interesting to know how many 2s I have in my life. And I love it. But it also is very interesting to think about how different we can be. And I love that kind of question. And by the way, my friend too, Lissa, is very creative as well. She's always been very like artsy, fartsy.
And that's the 4. And that's the 4. So maybe...
that's right.
So they're the tortured artist. Like I swear, these 4s, when they're healthy, they are just creative geniuses.
Can I tell you, I'm also drawn to 4s. Yeah.
Yeah. And that could be what's getting flagged with the 4 for her, is when she's feeling really creative, she's leaning into her 4.
I shouldn't. I laugh at this. By the way, Alyssa, I hope this is okay for me to say, but she's making this fairy garden out of a stump right now, and I told her to keep taking pictures of it. But when we were in college, she actually made me this big poster board from Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart. It had glitter all over it, and it was a very pretty, like, framing of it. And my friend Darren and I exchanged that poster back and forth for years. But, here's the interest. I love those people, and I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
Like, one of my best friends is a tattoo artist, and he's very creative. And very artsy-fartsy in so many ways, but I'm drawn to that as well because I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, the interesting piece is I'm not that artist. Both of my kids are artists, too. They're very creative. But
Yes.
I'm just not that person, so I think I'm really struck by it. So anyway,
I know,
we learn
it's
a
sort
lot.
of
And
like a magical, whimsical quality, right? That's like really beautiful and playful, but also oftentimes people that are incredibly creative, they are tapped into just this like darker undercurrent of maybe like sadness or pain.
Yeah, maybe. Which I'm also, I went to by the way, and this is kind of an offshoot, but my friends that I went out to dinner with last night, listen, I actually walked around Northeast where she used to live and did the art of whirl, looked at a number of different places. And I literally walked in to a studio of this guy who does pretty dark art, and I seriously could barely breathe. It was like so intense and so meaningful, and I started getting teary, and then Lissa introduced me to him. His name is Nick. I love him very much for all he contributes. But I literally started talking to him, and I got a little teary. I'm like, what is going on? So I sat. Lissa's so great. She's such a great friend. We kind of sat on this uncomfortable red velvet furniture in that studio, and I just kind of thought, like, what is happening for me? Like, what is it? And I don't know that it's not simply like I connect to that dark side of things based on the work that we do and how many challenging, difficult stories we hear. It could be a lot of things, but it's interesting. I think I'm, that kind of tragic artist piece might be my draw.
That's exactly right. And what an incredible gift to be able to communicate that powerful feeling that just resonates in others. It's a gift, right? And even if you don't feel particularly creative, it punched you right in the gut, right?
It really fucking punched me. And I will tell you, the picture that's right at the front of the studio when you walk in the door is my favorite of all. And I really should probably purchase it. It's called Serenity. I probably should go back and get it.
Well, maybe after the gin and tonic, we should go and check it out. Doug, we're back to mailbagging.
I love mailbags.
Let's do it. Okay, so you haven't heard this letter that we got. I'm going to hit you. It's so good.
I like surprises.
Good. Okay, this is Jason. He's 36, and he says, I'm running out of ways to ask my fiance, who's a 32-year-old woman, for more affection. She brings me so much joy. We spend all day laughing at dumb jokes and poking fun at each other. And we finally figured out how to have disagreements without letting them build or cause unnecessary tension. But I'm not getting what I need. I'm not getting the physical affection I crave, and I've tried so many things. I feel like this is a really typical couples issue.
It is. I'm familiar with this dynamic.
Yeah, it happens. He says, I'm not just talking about sex, although that has nearly dropped off altogether as well. I'm talking about the little things, a hug or a kiss when I get home, a snuggle on the couch or in bed before we fall asleep. Even when we first started dating, she wasn't necessarily the run to the door to greet you with a kiss type of girl, but we were definitely more physical. We used to have great sex that she initiated, and we used to hold hands walking the dogs or rub each other's backs watching a movie, which is so sad because that's so sweet. He says, now 5 years later, there's virtually none of that. I feel like I've tried everything. I've suggested books. I shared my love language, and she said she doesn't believe in that. I suggested therapy. She doesn't think she needs that and doesn't want to talk to someone. I've dropped 1,000 hints. And when that didn't work, I've been outright blunt and asked for what I need. If I do that, she'll acquiesce from time to time, but it gets met with an eye roll, making it feel disingenuous. A little backstory. It all seems to have changed when we moved. I got offered a dream job a year into us dating, and I was very honest with her. I couldn't pass it up, but I love her, and I asked her to consider moving. I brought her to the new city once to try it out, and she liked it. She decided to move and insisted that it was her own decision. But trust me when I tell you that the first year was rough. Both of us were virtually alone in a new city, except I had a team of new colleagues. She only had me. 2 years of that, including the first year of lockdown. Later, she was finally finding her groove. She had her own friends and her own interests in town. Most importantly, she was telling people back home that she actually liked it here, and she started looking at houses for us to buy. All of that was to get to this. During that time when we drifted apart, or during that time was when we drifted apart physically. I knew she was stressed, depressed, and isolated from her friends, so I did everything I could to comfort her when she needed it, and I gave her space when she asked for it. But then the space became, I just don't like that. I wonder if he's talking about like physical affection.
That's how I interpret that.
After about a year in the new city with us having regular sex, she started to pull away and say no, which was frustrating since it was the only physical connection we had. We got in a couple of big fights about it where I explained that I just need to be touched and held, and she kept saying it was normal for couples who had been together a while, which, okay, I get it. We don't need to have sex 3 times a day, but maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And then the dry spell. We went 6 months without having sex. I would initiate. She'd say no. So I'd roll over and give her space because she said me spooning her was too warm. 6 months without significant physical affection. Maybe a couple of hugs and a kiss on the cheek if I was going out of town. Now it's been 3 years of that. Sex once every few months, never initiated by her, with very little effort on her part. It got to the point where I went on antidepressants because I felt so ignored. To her benefit, they can kill a sex drive, so I eventually stopped initiating anything. Here's the thing. She asks me all the time for back rubs, arm tickles, hand and foot massages, but never reciprocates. She guilts me and says she'll rub my back afterwards, but always finds a reason not to. I used to love doing it, but now I just feel used, and I hate to say it, but I've lost trust in her because she doesn't follow through. It breaks my heart. I love this woman. I really do. And she insists I'm the man she wants to be with. She's always sending sweet texts when I'm out of the house or on a work trip about how much she misses me. She's insisting we're supposed to be together, but I don't know how much longer I can say it, that it will get better, because I don't believe it. First, she was going through the move, then the depression, but now she seems to be thriving in our new home with our new dog and the new job that she loves. And I'm over here with my back to her, texting a letter to you because I feel so alone laying in the bed that we share. I'm just so sad. I don't know what to do.
Oh, boy. First of all, Jason, I want to give you such kudos for writing in, being articulate in the way that you are, being insightful in the way that you are, that your trust is slowly been broken. And I want to commend you for approaching her first, because I was going to say, my initial thoughts as I started listening to this mailbag was, I want to make sure that you're communicating directly and openly and honestly about what you need and what's lacking for you to create that intimate connection. But it sounds like you've done a really, really good job of that, and I applaud you for approaching therapy. I applaud you for exploring different ways of getting to the next phase of this relationship and addressing what it is. Love languages, whether she believes it or not, they have a role in this conversation. I'm not sure if she's getting what she needs. It sounds like touch is also important for her, since you're doing tickles of arms and hand and foot rubs and all that sort of thing. I'm really really concerned about someone who says, I will rub your back and then doesn't. Of course, that's a bait. It's a tease. And then you don't get it. So I want to know, I got to tell you, there's something going on for her is what my sense is. I don't know what happened here, what resentment she might have, what is in the way of her being as fully available to this relationship as she might. But there's something that changed for her, and it could be as simple as moving to this new location and having a really difficult time relying on you for everything and feeling vulnerable. It could be all kinds of things. But I got to tell you, there's something happening, because someone who does not follow through on what they agreed to do, there's something mysterious about that. And that's something to be confronted in therapy. Like if somebody says, I'm going to do this and I don't do it, I want to know what that is. Like, is it a mental health issue? Is it a neurological issue? Is it an underlying issue that she's not aware of that's preventing her from being as fully in this relationship as she can be? It could be all of those things. But I'm glad that you're talking about love languages. That came up for me. It's something that I thought about as you were talking. I even find myself thinking this is where the two of you communicating, like I think one of the things, and I'm going to just go after her comment about, this is what happens in relationships that have been around for a while. I call bullshit on that. I think our relationships change, but there's always a way, and I'm going to go back to my 4 C's: chemistry, communication, compromise, and commitment, as kind of the 4 foundations to building a sustaining relationship. I'm curious about the chemistry piece. I mean, you two talk about a satisfying sexual relationship for a period of time. And so I think there is physical chemistry, which I don't think necessarily dies, but it has to be kind of replenished. It has to be like, re-triggered in some cases, where people have to open up conversation about what they're experiencing in the bedroom or wherever you two have sexual contact. But I think there's a part where I think if you can talk about like fantasies and fetishes and kinks and what works and what doesn't work in your physical relationship, it can really enliven some of that stuff that feels dead. And, we as a culture do not do well talking openly and honestly about our sexual desires. And I think that's a shame. I think we all grow up in different ways, and regardless of, what our backgrounds are, I encourage everybody to be open and honest about what they want and they don't want, without shame, because shame is the biggest factor, I think, that gets in the way of people talking about that. But again, Jason, I would encourage you to talk with her and say, do we need to invigorate our sexual and emotional chemistry and intimacy by, really having those honest, open discussions. I'm flagged a little bit that she rolls her eyes. I think that's really disregarding and disrespectful, and just really doesn't make you feel heard in any way, shape, or form. I don't love that she's not willing to go to therapy, because I got to tell you something, Jason, the outlook is not good if it continues this way. I'm also very curious about your choice of an antidepressant. There are antidepressants, of course, that do not affect libido in the same way as others. And so taking a look at that with your physician and seeing if that's the right medication for you. I'm also hearing from you that you still have interest, but it makes it easier to walk away from the sexual content because, these medications might be reducing that libidinal impulse just a little bit and your drive. But I think the bigger issue is, like you said, you have your back to her. That's turning away. Like I just call that turning away from your partner, and I think that's a dangerous sign moving forward. You have to, turn back toward her and have continuous, honest discussions. And Jason, my concern is that if she really will not engage with you, we have a problem. Like I think there's no way for this relationship to go, especially at 32 and 36. Like, you barely started. This could go on for a long time, and there's no way for you to live the rest of your life without getting your needs met. By the way, your physical requests are really basic. And I want to know more from her. Like, I'm kind of curious about, like, what is it that prevents her from wanting to touch you? Is it like, I'm not going to give you that because she feels too vulnerable, or she's giving too much, or maybe because she moved on your behalf, even though it was her choice and she was clear and thoughtful about that? Maybe she does have some resentment, and so she's not willing to continuously give you what you need. And withholding, though, is not a way to build a healthy dynamic in any way, shape, or form. And it does, of course, diminish that trust that you have, and it's got to rebuild, Jason. What do you think, Talia?
Oh, I mean, I feel devastated for him, because also what he was saying is, I don't know how many more ways I can do this. I don't know how much longer I can make it, because he really has tried so many different approaches to this problem. And I also feel like I've got some questions for her, really.
I do too.
About what is happening? Why the withholding? Is it exactly what you were saying? Like, is it underlying anger, resentment, withholding because she's not getting her needs met, or she is not feeling good in her own life? is it also that like sometimes people go through periods where they're not feeling particularly sexy or their libido is low? I wonder about that for her. I wonder if she's just sort of gotten disconnected from the part of her that is more sexual, which sometimes I think for people, if that is an issue, if people just start feeling like, yeah, we used to have this fabulous sex life, but I'm no longer really feeling like I enjoy being approached that way. I don't really feel in touch with my own sensuality, sexuality. Sometimes it does help to even just ground yourself in your own sensuality, which can lead into feeling more sexual. For instance, just thinking about all of your senses. Just wake up the senses. So, like, smell something amazing, listen to something powerful, just taste something delicious. Just be in your body and let yourself be titillated by whatever it is in the external environment. Sometimes people really
smell lilacs.
Sometimes people get so in their own head that they are no longer in touch with their physical needs. So if that is a possibility, that might be something to look into. What I feel sad about is that she does not seem interested in looking into this. Like when somebody is saying my needs are not being met, or this is my love language specifically, and someone else is like, that's too bad. What it makes me think is that she's not getting her needs met. And then there is some weird withholding of like, well, too bad for you. I'm not getting, you're not scratching my back. I'm not going to scratch yours, which just like you said, Doug, starts this dynamic of withholding rather than I'm going to make sure no matter how I'm feeling about my needs, that I'm going to really care about yours. And then you're going to feel this generosity of spirit to meet mine, even though it's not as natural for you.
And you referenced something, and I appreciate all of that. And I think what you talked about, like we talked about possible resentments, we talked about other things that might be going on. But I do wonder physiologically. I took a look at her age again at 32, and of course likely not menopausal or anything hormonal necessarily going on at that time period for most people, although I don't know. I mean, it's worth checking out.
I feel like have you heard people say that usually like a man's sexuality peaks when they're like 18, 19?
Yep.
And a woman's peaks when you're in your early 30s.
Yeah. And, so I don't know if there's something else going on, but it's really important to talk about it. I just want to say also, I mean, we talk fairly easily about, go to therapy, talk about your honest, open feelings and experiences. But a lot of people have a really hard time doing that. Like based on how she grew up, based on what her stigmas are, maybe about psychotherapy or talking about her sexuality and whatnot. I think there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, but bottom line is it really does help everyone to kind of sort out what's going on for themselves and figure it out. I want to add one more piece that's kind of interesting before I forget, and that's that I think a lot of couples at this point decide to either try to open up their relationship or create an ethically non-monogamous or frankly maybe not ethically and go out on to look for what they need. And I discourage you from doing that without having an open, honest discussion first. I mean, if at any point you find yourself, Jason, needing some intimacy, don't go out without talking to her first, letting her know how kind of desperate you're feeling about this. But we all have needs, and we're all going to find it if we don't get it within the context of a relationship that we've been working hard to communicate what we want and need. Go ahead.
I mean, the poor guy went on antidepressants.
Yeah, I know.
Because he was feeling so lonely and dejected.
Right. Yep.
I feel like what's really kind of standing out to me as the question, and maybe, Jason, this could be a way to bring it up. I don't know if it's going to go well or not go well, but maybe the one angle you haven't tried is, sweetheart, tell me what the obstacles are in our way, and then maybe you and I can brainstorm. So if you're even asking her, tell me what happens for you when I want affection. Tell me what happens for you when maybe I'm rubbing your feet and I'm kind of feeling like I want to be more connected, because to me, it feels like you are repulsed. Or to me, it just feels like you're not that into me anymore, or that you feel like it's a burden, or whatever that is that it feels like to you. And ask her what's actually happening. And if you guys have the kind of relationship where she can be really honest with you, you might find out, you know what? I don't feel good in my own body. Or I love you, but I don't know if I'm attracted to you. And honestly, as painful as that is, you got to know. You guys are, you're probably planning a wedding at some point here. You're engaged, but you're not married. And I feel like maybe the two of you are so invested that both of you are really terrified to actually have that conversation and find out this isn't that kind of compatible anymore.
Except I don't think Jason's afraid of it. I think Jason is hitting this head on, and he's recognizing, I'm writing into you because I can't talk to her. And so I have to, it was very, very descript. Like, I have my back to her and I'm texting this question to you because... he's ready to talk. I mean, Jason, I'm very impressed with your willingness to look at all of it. I think your willingness to let's go into therapy and figure this out. I'm always encouraged by people who are willing to look at the difficult stuff. So I don't think it's Jason. I'm very concerned, and I don't know. I mean, there could be, like you said, Talia, we both have questions for her. What is it that's going on? And I'm someone who believes that each decade of our life, she just turned, she's in her early 30s. Every decade kind of involves new awarenesses of ourselves. And maybe she's having second thoughts. Maybe she does not feel like this is right. But she's got to be unafraid of that and be transparent and be direct and honest. And I know I'm asking people to do something that's not always easy, but it doesn't go well unless you do it. No. So however you get to that place, and this is where having a therapist who's a mediator who can help kind of facilitate some of that discussion. Jason, I think you're on the right track. I would go back to it. If you listen to this and you can share this episode with her, by all means, I would absolutely recommend for her to be open to the experience of opening herself up and being free in this world. That's the only way that she's going to feel the best she can feel as well. But it's the only way that you two can figure out what the next phase of your relationship might look like.
I mean, I think you're right. I feel like they're at a crossroads, because the only two ways that you're going to get out of this is for when one of you in a relationship says, this thing is really heartbreaking to me, I'm feeling sad, I'm not getting my needs met. The only two options in those situations is for someone to say, oh, wow, not on my radar. I'm so sorry. I'm crazy about you. I have openness, interest, willingness to engage with that problem and figure out some solutions. Or, I'm sorry, your problem isn't really that interesting to me. I don't really think it's a me thing. I don't feel like I need to do anything about it. And I don't know how that relationship is going to fare. Probably
Agreed.
not well. It's sort of the end of the line in some ways.
Yeah. Prognosis doesn't feel good unless she's willing to take a look at what's going on for her and be honest. So
that's right.
Our best to you as you kind of pursue this and as you get further along in this, and maybe, again, this episode might be something you can listen to together. I mean, it might be interesting just be in the car. I've had people tell me they turn on my an episode in the car because they want their partner or girlfriend or boyfriend or spouse to hear what it is that we're talking about. Find a way to bring it up. It's not a bad idea. Our best to you, Jason. We wish you well.
Yes, we really do. And I think just if you are brave enough to face the possibility that however she does respond to this next attempt might determine your fate. But we are rooting for you, and thank you so much for writing in.
Which brings us to our second mailbag of the day, which is a whole nother issue. But as we talk about chemistry and we talk about the various ways that people struggle in their relationships, this is an interesting one. And I will be curious.
I'm excited.
You should be excited.
Give it to me.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, this is a fun one, which everyone is, by the way, I bet everybody who listens is going to have this visceral response to this. My boyfriend and I have been together for about 8 months now, and his poor hygiene has been the source of stress for me recently. He doesn't use deodorant and often goes long periods of time without brushing his teeth.
Oh.
We've had, you had a visceral response. We've had conversations about the lack of dental hygiene because it came up organically one night when he said he doesn't care about his dental hygiene because he will just get veneers if his teeth get bad. Which, by the way, I have some, but that's not why I got veneers.
Wait, show me again. I really like that.
I love my dentist. Thank you.
I mean, my God, those are perfect. Sorry, continue.
Anyway, I gently told him that if he continues to brush his teeth irregularly, it would quickly get to the point that I find his breath really bad at times. He was very hurt by this and became angry with me for mentioning it due to, quote unquote, lack of consideration for his feelings. All kinds of feelings about that.
I have so many feelings.
When we met for the first time, I noticed he had a bit of body odor, but I didn't think much of it because it wasn't overwhelming, and I thought it was a one-time thing. Though I eventually realized he simply does not use deodorant after he spent a couple days at my place, and I told him he could use mine, but he declined because he, quote-unquote, likes to sweat. I'm unsure how to initiate a conversation with him that will not hurt his feelings. He's very important to me, but I also can't be with someone who doesn't take care of themselves. That last phrase probably being the most important. So, have at it!
Okay, this is the first thing I want to say is I think that I know the part that's pissing you off the most about this, and I want to guess. I want to guess the part that you are like, are you effing kidding me with this? That because you're all about like direct communication. So if somebody is being direct and communicating with him and he is saying that like really hurt his feelings that she's speaking her truth, I could see that really rubbing a person the wrong way.
It rubs me the wrong way. I believe in total honesty and transparency. So go ahead. Keep talking.
Okay. So I will say that like a light BO situation, right?
Yep.
Could go either way. That like some people might mind, some people might not. Some people might be into the pheromones. Some people really like Axe body spray only or whatever it is, right?
Oof. Yeah.
But it's all a very personal chemistry sensory thing, which we sort of were, talking about in the last one too. But the not brushing your teeth and saying if your teeth fall out, you're just going to get veneers. I feel like that is beyond a hygiene issue. First of all, you know how I like to speak for everyone. That's gross. That's really gross. Like, you've got to brush your teeth, dude. Like, flossing also important, but you got to brush. And also I feel like maybe I'm someone who it just feels like if you're not appetizing, no one's going to want to kiss you or make out with you or do any of like you need to be appetizing to somebody. Or maybe even there's someone for everyone. If you find someone that you're both kind of into a little bit of like a dirtbag vibe or like hippie vibe, or that's like cute, then that's fine. And there's nothing to talk about. But this sounds like next level. And I feel like somebody who says, if my body falls apart because I'm not taking care of it, I'm just going to do some sort of like medical intervention, that symbolizes something bigger than hygiene. I feel like there's like not mental illness, but there is something going on with this guy that he doesn't feel like self-care is even something that he is interested in at all.
You know what's interesting about this? There is that clear distinction for me between something that can be frankly a turn on for some people. I'm going to own that I am a pheromonal based guy. Like when I go on a date with someone, I honestly frankly want to smell them. Like I want to make sure that their natural scent is something that I'm drawn to because my chemistry is very much geared toward that. And so I need to know that. But there's a difference between not bathing for a week and just kind of working out and having a sweat. So there's a lot of different pieces to that.
Huge
not to get too
difference.
Personal about that. But the teeth issue, and by the way, I did not get veneers because I did not brush my teeth. I just had a dead tooth, and they weren't straight. So
Are you sure? I'd like evidence of that.
I can show you evidence, and my high school graduation picture. I'm glad to show you. I accidentally chipped one of my teeth when my grandmother was washing my hair when I was young in this porcelain sink. And I chipped a tooth
Oh
and never got
no.
black, but it was a little yellow. And I'm like, yeah. Anyway, one of my friends called me Snaggletooth at one point. I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going to get these taken care of. So what I would say about this is there's that difference. And, by the way, bad breath is not a pheromonal issue. It's not like taking in a person's like natural scent and whatnot that draws us toward people in an animalistic sort of way. Bad breath
No.
is different than that. And really there is that big difference, Talia, between a health issue, which by the way, it's
Yeah.
not just going to stop with that. There can be gum disease, which can lead to heart problems. So this is a health issue versus a hygiene issue. And
That's
maybe
right.
that's maybe not exactly accurate because of both they can be together. But
Well, and a self-care issue.
well, yeah. And so there's something about like a lot of people are drawn to people who take care of themselves, people who work out, people who groom themselves. I got to tell you something. If I went on a date and the dude had on Axe body spray, I'd be out of there. Axe body spray, stray.
Oh,
Um,
come on. But that feels a little dramatic. Like that's a
oh God, no.
conversation.
I
When
suppose.
I
Okay, that's
met
fair.
Rob, he had colored contact lenses. And that was just a
Oh,
conversation away. Just a little course correct. All you need to do is say, I prefer your natural scent or your
yeah.
natural
Okay,
eye
so
color.
no, I know. You're right about that. As the perpetrator of communication, and demands of people, I absolutely agree that you should communicate about those things. Which, going back to this is exactly what this is. He should not be angry at you for having feelings or thoughts. I know he is, and I don't know what that defensiveness is about. If you're with somebody and they tell you honestly, so I just don't like your, if somebody said, I don't like your whatever, goatee, or that you, I don't know, whatever it might be. I might make changes or I might not, which kind of goes to deal breakers, by the way. Like, I think there's a
Right.
point at which there needs to be a conversation. And if he's like, I'm not changing and I'm never going to brush my teeth again, I don't know how this is going to work for you, which I don't think he's going to brush his teeth again. I don't know how that works, by the way. Like, there's so many things that are
My
going to happen in his mouth.
Oh my God. My dad, who was literally the funniest person ever on the planet, the funniest guy, he was a professor of Eastern European history. He said that Mao Zedong, who I should know who that is, was he like a Chinese emperor? That
I
anyway,
thought,
long
yeah,
story short, I don't know. I don't even know if it was like the
I believe that to be
15th
true. Yep.
century or like 20 years ago. But anyway, don't judge me. But what he used to say is that Mao Zedong used to always say that I don't brush my teeth because a tiger doesn't brush his teeth.
I think that's a real valid and rational way of responding, but so silly
Oh
because
my
that's
God.
not
But
really it.
no, but this is what you said that I just like couldn't agree with more, which I hadn't thought about. That if this guy feels like this is the hill I'm going to die on, that's a part, not brushing my teeth is a part of my identity and something I feel really good and proud about, that I can't be with someone who doesn't appreciate and celebrate that about me, right? You can fill in the blank. I
Yep.
mean,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, the deal
So
breakers.
there's also a difference between like morning breath when you lean over and kiss the person in your bed and, it's not the freshest time of the day, and someone who really specifically gets angry at you, which is a defensive mechanism, I think, in this particular case. I think he's defensive about it. Can I go back and say something as well? I grew up, as many people know, in a family that did not have a lot of money. We did not even have a very nice home to live in, and we took baths on Saturday night. That was just what we did. And so that was all we had. And then we watched Carol Burnett and Lawrence Welk, by the way. But
Oh.
that's dating me in a really big way. But there's a part of this that, the family that he grew up in, like this is where a lot of these patterns and these habits get taught. And so it's possible that he just needs a recorrection. But if he goes to the dentist once, they're going to strongly encourage twice a day brushing and flossing and all these sorts of things that all of us know are a way of maintaining our mouth health. And it's a big mouth issue. Like, again, gums that are problematic can lead to heart issues. And so it's really important for him to take a look at this. This is a health issue. And it would turn me off if I were in your shoes, to be with someone who did not care about themselves enough to consider that, but also didn't care about me enough to care about their health. So there's multiple avenues to go at. So what I encourage you to do is keep doing what you're doing. Like, be direct. Continue to say, this bothers me. If you're not willing to deal with it, I'm not sure what else to do because I don't want to kiss you anymore. I don't want to be in the same space with you because it is an offensive odor to me. Different than the deodorant. Like, I bet there's a really easy way.
Right.
Like, he doesn't have to wear deodorant. I actually know a ton of people who do not wear deodorant. But I think there's a part of this where, that's not the biggest issue, because if he's bathing regularly, he may not have much body odor at all by the end of the day if he's doing it daily. But this guy is opposed to hygiene, and that can be a health issue in so many ways. So
yeah,
I wish
I'd
you
be
well
so
with continuing. Go ahead.
Curious about that. No, yeah. I mean, we really want you to have this conversation. And again, I mean, sort of like the first mailbag too, right? It's like, you've got to speak your truth about what you're wanting and needing. And either that conversation goes well and there's some willingness or interest in meeting your needs, or this is really the hill that they want to die on. And then you have to ask yourself some really important, hard questions about the trajectory of the relationship.
And I just want to add other pieces. Like, if he's not brushing his teeth, the other people in your life that he's around, if you introduce him to your friends, if you introduce him to your family, if you introduce him to coworkers, there's going to be a response like, why is this person? Because we are a reflection of who's with us as well. And so if that person is offensive in any way, and not that it matters what other people think, but it's going to affect your ability to have a social life and the circle of people that want to be around the two of you.
Right.
Because this would be a very
right.
common, not the deodorant as much, but that's my speculation. But
well, maybe if he's like just a smelly person who looks like Pigpen from Peanuts.
Fifi LePew, Pigpen.
Isn't
if
it
his
Pepe?
nickname
Pepe? Who's Fifi?
What did I say?
LePew?
Peepee? Fifi.
I think it's Pepe Le Pew, the skunk.
Oh, I think it is too.
Oh my
That's
God.
very much more French.
I love him.
Do you?
I forgot all about him.
But if people are calling him Stinky, if that's his new nickname, or Pigpen, you're going to really know that people are trying to make a statement, and it shouldn't be passive aggressive.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be judgmental or hurtful. You've let him know what he thinks, what you think. I don't love his response, and I'm hoping he can come back and say, okay. I probably want to brush my teeth because I want more kisses from you. Like, it's a win-win situation for that hygienic issue and that self-care and health issue. But, I don't know if the deodorant is like negotiable. I don't know. It's like you said before, it wasn't like immense or overwhelming. And so it was okay. I don't know. I'm more focused on the teeth because I know that there's a health issue that could lead to bigger health issues. So,
and also it's just a little gross. And basically, we feel you. And thank you so much for writing in. We hope that some of this was helpful. Takeaways that you can bring back to your relationships and just see if maybe there is a tiny little angle there that you haven't tried, and
a little
seek
compromise.
out the willingness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you need help, we're out there. Therapists are out there to help you navigate this difficult, challenging, sensitive topic.
Oh, it is sensitive. And we wish you the very best of luck. And we're going to manifest some really good outcomes for you guys in these relationships.
I wish you good smells.
I wish you good smells. Oh my God, I love that. Olfactory satisfaction. And we can't wait to chat next Tuesday. We'll talk to you later, guys.